You are live on Joy 99.7 FM. My name is Mensah, and this is Ghana Connect. Now, this week, individual bondholders began the fight to get government to exempt them from the controversial debt exchange program. We had the privilege here at Joy FM and on the Joy News channel broadly of hearing from many affected bondholders.
Please help me.
So government is asking its citizens to make the ultimate sacrifice to help save the economy. So tonight we're asking citizens, has government and its officials sacrificed enough themselves to earn your sacrifice in fixing the economy? And by the way, what will convince you to make the sacrifice required to help save the economy from the current crisis? Let's connect to citizens home and abroad. Adokwe Kujo is a concerned citizen and connects with us via phone. Hello, Adokwe.
Hello, Ivan.
Great to have you connect with us tonight. Innocent Kudu Madifo is a project consultant and a pensioner connecting with us on Zoom. Hello, Innocent.
Hello.
Hi, Innocent.
Evans.
Thank you very much for connecting with us tonight.
Glad to be with you.
Also connecting with us, Kweku Uswampem is an insurance broker. Felix Kwame Nyako is a PhD senior lecturer and master programs director at Nobel International Business School. Also connects with us. George Poku is an accountant and radio presenter. He joins us from the USA, Georgia to be pretty specific. Carlo Olympio, a corporate lawyer, founder of Agency 77, a business advisory firm in Accra. All of you, thank you very much for connecting with us here on Ghana Connect to have this conversation. I want to start generally by getting your thoughts on broadly the current state of affairs and the debt exchange program, which really is, in essence, asking citizens to sacrifice. And as we've heard already, illustrated in that montage there, citizens say, well, this burden is not being shared equally. That's their view, those who have been asked to carry the burden. I wonder if you all share in that view. But let me start with you first. Innocent, let me hear from you first. The current debt exchange program, the state of affairs of the economy. Give me your general thoughts on where we are as a country.
Well, as far as the state of the economy is concerned, I would say we are in dire straits. Dire straits. And if you ask people to sacrifice more, I think it's like trying to squeeze water out of stone, especially when I don't see a similar effort on the part of who is asking me to sacrifice. If you ask me, those are my general thoughts for now.
Okay, that's an interesting bit there. I want to come to you. Carla, what do you make of you? I'm sure you've been monitoring what has been happening and the debt exchange program. The burden has been placed on a certain group of individuals, bondholders, etc. What's your general take on everything?
So, I mean, I agree with the previous speaker that the country clearly is in dire straits. It's almost like there's bad news every day. I don't have government bonds myself, but I know lots of people who do. And it's really, I mean, people are really, really angry, scared, devastated. And like I said, I don't have bonds, but, I have treasury bills and you don't know, you just don't know what's coming next. So, yeah, I mean, it's not good. It's not good.
Okay. So that's Carla. Carla has treasury bills, so at least she understands what it means to save when you've worked. I want to bring in also Adokwe. Adokwe is joining us on phone. Hello, Adokwe. What's your take?
Well, Ivan, thank you for having me. I agree with the earlier speaker. I think that this country is currently at an unfortunate.
Adokwe, I'm having some feedback. I don't know if there's a radio close to you or please turn it down completely so we can get clearer communications and a link to you.
I believe this should be better.
Fantastic. It's good now. Yes, go on.
Okay, so I am of the opinion that this country is at an unfortunate state which could have been avoided, but we find ourselves here. And unfortunately, the communication that is going on now suggests that we have to be revising our notes as far as savings culture in this country is concerned. And that's why I say it's quite unfortunate that we have come to this point.
Okay, so that's an interesting bit. So you're afraid that the result of this will affect savings culture?
Very much so, because if you are asking people who have worked all their life and have put away part of their salaries, their earnings, with the hope that they will enjoy it in the later part of their life, if you are telling people who are putting part of their money aside to invest and then use that money for something else in life, and now you say you are asking them to sacrifice all of that because of how government went into borrowing to run this country, then you are asking people to reconsider how they save and what they put their money into.
Let me bring in our friend who is an insurance broker, and I'm interested to hear his thoughts on where we are tonight. Kweku, it hasn't affected you, has it, as an insurance broker? Hello, Kweku Usampem. Do we have Kweku connected with us? Okay, maybe Kweku on mute for me if you've muted. Okay, I'll get Kweku to do that. Whilst I wait for him to do that, let me bring in Felix. Felix, I wonder what your take is on where we are.
Yes, good evening, Evans. Good evening to your cherished listeners. I think I share in the views expressed by the previous speakers. We are in a very dire situation. Ghana's economy is in a mess. And one would shudder to ask, if you are asking me as a citizen to tighten my belt, and you, the one asking me, I have not seen that from you, then what are you trying to tell me? So I think that government on this situation is not being truthful as well to Ghanaians. We heard the president said some time ago that individual bondholders and so on and so forth will not be part of this debt exchange program. But what do we see today? So I think that what we government is lacking is the truth, the trust. Ghanaians are not trusting this government. So therefore, anything they say, Ghanaians are not taking them seriously. So I think that we are in a mess. Our economy is in a mess. We are here today because we have borrowed out of proportion, and that is where we are now. So I think that it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. That is my initial comment.
Okay, so I've heard from all of you now. I want to bring in one interesting connector, George, because he is out of the jurisdiction, but he's a Ghanaian and he is in the U.S. state of Georgia. George, is it safe to say you're so far away from the nuclear explosion, and so you're not affected by this, or you have a view on what is happening back home? I'm curious to know.
Nah, I'm not that far away from the nuclear explosion. I have always been part of the explosion. I am part of the epicenter. The fact that I live in the US does not make me immune to some of these things. Proud to me living in Ghana to come to the US. I had treasury bills. I invested in some bonds, and so I am feeling what the average Ghanaian is feeling, and I am still an average Ghanaian, even in as much as I'm not in the country. But I have listened to all the submissions and I understand it perfectly. And there are two things that I'm going to say. The last gentleman said the government itself is not tightening its belt. The government itself is not respectful of Ghanaians because in this dire situation, they have not done anything to show the Ghanaian populace that they are going to do anything. In the US, when the economy sank, the government rose up and started saying that, okay, this and this is going to affect you, so I'm going to do this and help you out. Ghana is, let's burden the people that we are taking money from embedding them some more, whilst the people that are supposed to be on the citizens' behalf are still living in luxury and affluence. So for me, this whole thing is just a total slap in the face of the Ghanaian populace and the people that put their trust in Ghana by investing in those bonds.
Okay, so I've heard all your views on this. Let's now expand the conversation further. Innocent, let me bring you in. Do you feel the
Yes.
burden is being shared equally?
No, not at all, not at all. And as we continue, the other speakers speaking, one thing just struck me, very ironical, that the situation would be brought on poor Ghanaians by one person who some, let's say 2 or 3 decades ago, was pushing this notion of investment, and where we were made to believe or taught to believe that government bonds were the safest things to go into. Right now, we've turned the whole philosophy of investment upside down, something that I have tried to teach my kids. I mean, what would they believe now? What will Ghanaians believe now after this? Having trusted and, as it were, loaned money to government where it's supposed to be safest. And here we are, slapped in the face with this. I mean, who is going to trust government anymore? Is government going to have the space to borrow domestically again? I mean, everybody is going to be mistrustful of government. And where does that lead us? I mean, the burden is not being shared equally at all. I mean, we started with 100 and something ministers, and they are still opposed. We still see convoys of V8s, and you wonder where they're going, and you count as many as 15, 20 V8s in a convoy. What for? And yet we ask people to sacrifice. I mean, this.
Interesting
Yes,
point. Stay with me. Carla, do you agree with that?
So here's what I think. You know, in being invited onto this call, one thing I want to be mindful of is not to just go bashing the government without nuance. In a way, in a sense, the way politicians do. You know, when they're in opposition, bash, and then they get in there and then they realize that sometimes they're even worse, right? But what I will agree with is that the consistent consensus from everybody I have spoken to, and I think this is what our government needs to really appreciate, is that everybody seems to feel that the people in power, the authorities, are not sacrificing enough. And if they are, they're not showing it. So it's either that they are not or they are communicating poorly. So I don't know what it is. And the V8 thing is a real touch point, I tell you. So I really think that first of all, there has to be better communication. There has to be more empathy. And let me just say this now. People are so angry and distressed that there's probably nothing the government can do right now to really appease people. But I think what they can do is to show more empathy, because everybody I speak to right now feels like there's a bit of a let them eat cake kind of Marie Antoinette attitude. And that's why I'm saying if they are sacrificing, they're not communicating it clearly enough to the people of Ghana. And they really, really need to.
Very interesting point you raised. And I want to put that to Felix. Felix, Carla says things are so bad. She believes there's nothing government can do to appease people, but what they need to do is to empathize more. You agree with that point?
Yes, Evans, I do agree. But in empathizing, you must also show a sense of sympathy or a sense of empathy. You can't just show it. How do you do that? One, you see, as we speak, there are some state organizations that have 3 deputy CEOs that are being paid by the state. As we speak, look at the size of government. We still have large when you go to Ministry of Trade and Industry, for example, we have 3 deputy ministers. We have Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Road, Ministry of Transport, and then Aviation. Why can't these 3 ministries be brought under one umbrella to be handled by one person? So I think that, yes, government must show its empathy by reducing its size of government. I mean, you need to sacrifice. Government must sacrifice. It is not only the citizens that needs to sacrifice. In this case, government has gone on the borrowing spree. They borrowed. I remembered people are saying that where we are going, it will get to a time that we can't even breathe. And this is where we are now. We've just borrowed, and you ask yourself, what have we done with all the monies we've gone for? So now you are asking us, the citizens, to sacrifice. If you want us to sacrifice, then you, the government, must also be seen to be sacrificing. So 1, reduce the size of government. 2, government, some of these flagship programs must also be looked at. You know, we need to review some of the flagship programs. But when you talk, somebody might see it to be a political gymnastic or something. But the fact remains that Evans, government needs to do something. We were told that no convoy, no V8s, and all that, fuel coupon reduced. These are not tangible things that Ghanaians are expecting. We want to see government being serious in cutting down expenditure. Okay, so I think that, yes, you empathize. By empathizing, let Ghanaians feel that you are actually empathizing. It is not a talk show. You don't just say it in the air, but we must feel it. And by feeling it, we need to see action. We need to see government reducing its expenditure. And when that is done, I think that Ghanaians will have that kind of trust and confidence in the government.
Okay, so you raise very important points. And I want to bring Adokwe. Adokwe, this is the case for government. In the 2023 budget, and I've heard Felix narrow down some of the things, and V8 has been mentioned by Innocent, Carla, and both Felix as well, all 3. Now, this is what government said they will do to show that they are also carrying part of the burden. 1, a ban, and I'm quoting from the budget, a ban on the use of V8s or its equivalent except for cross-country travel. All government vehicles would have to use GV number plates from January 2023. Only essential official foreign travel across government, including SOE, shall be allowed. As far as possible, meetings and workshops shall be held within the official environment of government facilities. Government-sponsored external training and staff development activities of the Office of the President, etc., will be put on hold. There shall be a reduction in the size of all convoys. There is a freeze on tax, etc., etc. Adokwe, isn't that enough to show you and convince you that your government is carrying its part of the burden, and hence you should be willing to do yours?
Well, Evans, the issue of sacrifice is, with the greatest respect, an English word. It has a meaning. And my understanding of the meaning of sacrifice is that it means giving up something that is valued for the sake of something else, which is more important for wedding. So the question to ask is, are the things contained in the budget so valued, so precious, so crucial to government that they are being sacrificed for something more important? I don't know if my question is very clear, but in my mind, I am quite clear that the things government is talking about do not amount to the kind of sacrifice we need in the current situation we find ourselves.
Okay, I get your point, but we have a terrible connection to you. We'll try and fix that. Let me put that question to Kojo Poku, who says, yes, I'm in Georgia, but I have bonds and treasury bills in Ghana as affected. Kojo, of course, so your bonds, is subject down to an action program, which means that you will carry the burden, the bonds that you've been putting. Government.
Evans is George.
Oh, George. Yes. Your bonds will be is part of the. That's your contribution to fixing the economy. I just read out what government's contribution is in the budget. Do you find it enough? That's when I read that to you. Does it give you comfort when you think about your bonds as part of the debt action program to help revive the economy?
There is no comfort that I am ever going to get from this administration because of the level of frivolousness that they have shown since their inception up till date. Even whilst we were in the throes of this, we were trying to figure out what to do. The president got on a plane with an entourage and went to Qatar to go speak to players and watch a game, and then turn around and come back to Ghana. These are expenditures that can be saved in accounting and in life. Whenever your expenses outweigh your revenue, you are already in a bind. So since we are having these problems raising money, and so we are in a bind, why would you just wake up and decide, can't you do a Zoom call? Governments in the West do Zoom calls with their secretaries of state, their ministers, in order not for people to travel to wherever they have to be. So if we are saying that somebody is trying to help us out or do something, and that same person wakes up and says, okay, for me to speak to this coach and for me to do things with this coach and with these players, I need to jump on a jet and fly all the way to Doha just to go see them and interact with them and come back home. Then, and that was on the tail of a lot of travel that had happened that were not necessary. If we are a bleeding country, let's behave like a bleeding country rather than we behaving like a country that has money to spare. And so our president is taking all these trips and bringing the entourage along with them. This is just, it's not the right way to go. Personally, that is my view. They haven't showed me anything for me to think that the 100 and something ministers, has he trimmed it down? The number of deputy ministers, has it been trimmed? The expenditure that is going to the whole parliament, has it been trimmed? Nothing that is being done shows me that they are taking a trim. And so if you tell me that I am going to lose out, I am not going to be happy myself.
Okay, so Innocent, it is clear that we are where we are. If nothing gives, the economy will crash. Possibly, Sri Lanka may repeat itself, which is we can import essentials. Drugs will be, our shelves will be empty. Something must give. So what must give then? The government believes they've done enough. As if we've seen the budget, citizens, from everything I've heard, you are categorical that that's not enough. So we found ourselves in a place where citizens and government are on two opposite sides. But the reality is the economy is crashing. So what must give?
Evans, before I go to that question, let me talk about this measures that they put in the budget, claiming they were doing their part. For me, it's not a transparent enough scoreboard. If they want us to believe and therefore get on board or get a buy-in, then they must devise a better means of showing us that, yes, we really are cutting down on expenditure.
What will qualify for you? What is it that you want to see to be convinced that you're showing it and indeed it's true?
Yes, for instance, they must come out with some information outlets, displays, so that in real time we see what is going on as far as cost cutting is concerned. But we won't be here, and then after 6 months, when we go for, say, media review, and then we find out that, after all, the targets were not achieved. So if we can see a month by month, publishing of facts and figures that clearly show that, look, expenditure used to be this much, is now this much, I believe that would maybe appease Ghanaians a bit and win them over to support. Yes, we are where we are. Something must give. I think that first of all, government must go further and show that they have cut costs or they are cutting more than they said they'll cut. What they promised to cut, I think, is not enough to, as it were, win us over. Well, at least personally, me.
So you've not been won over by the
no,
cuts?
Not at all. They must go further. They must show more.
Okay.
Because they have taken so much from us, they must give more.
Okay, now so let me go on, please.
If we are convinced, then this is our country. We don't want it to crash. I don't want this country to go up in flames. So if they can convince us that they have done enough, I believe Ghanaians are reasonable people and they will get some support.
Let me start with you, Innocent, and I'll ask the same question for everybody then. So give me that ultimate gesture that when you see government do and shows evidence of, it will make you say, yes, now I'm convinced. I'm ready to give this my all as well. I'm ready to put in my own bit of sacrifice to get us across this crisis. What is it? What would that thing be for you?
Well, for instance, this call to individual bondholders to accept what they're proposing. I mean, somebody might have bought these bonds, holding it for who knows how long. It's about to mature, and you say, bring it and come and take one that would extend tenor to another 5 years. Yes, this is it. If I am convinced and I'm holding bonds, which tenor would have to be extended and maybe even for lower coupons. Yes, I could do that.
Okay, my question is, so you're willing, if are you, by the way, a bondholder?
Indirectly, because I have investments in mutual funds, which ultimately would have some holdings in these government bonds for long-term investors.
Oh, absolutely, yes. You are equally affected then. So the question then I was asking earlier is, what is it that if you see your government do and it shows evidence for, will make you a bit more comfortable giving up those mutual bonds to say, this is my contribution to the crisis, to resolving the crisis?
Well, for me, one concrete thing that I would consider good, if I see amalgamation of ministries, a number of ministers drops from the 110 or 105 to about 75, I will then believe that they really, really are putting their money where their mouth is.
So that's a very specific thing a citizen wants to see.
I mean, we must have concrete, measurable things and not just, hazy promises which we cannot measure, we cannot gauge.
Great. Carla, what is it for you? What would that thing be for you?
Evans, I have to be honest, I don't think there's one thing. I do think that they have to make a concerted effort to communicate what these sacrifices are. They have to put themselves in the positions of ordinary Ghanaians. They have to think about how they would feel if they were not in government and what they need to sacrifice. And some of these flagship projects, I mean, for me, I'm sorry to say that I think the cathedral should be put on hold until we are past this crisis point. That's one thing for me, but I don't think there's any one thing. I think that there are many, 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 many things. And I think it's communication. I think even the language around the debt restructuring is confusing. I think people don't really understand. People don't understand how we got to this position. I think they need to communicate more clearly, more empathetically, and they have to show people if they are sacrificing and they say they are. I mean, I listened to the gentleman on Joy who said he was, I think, about to be 66, had debt, and he was talking about, maybe committing suicide. It was really, really heartbreaking. And I thought to myself, you need to really put something serious on the table in terms of sacrifice in order to reach out to people like that level of suffering. So yeah, that's from my perspective, that's it.
Okay, so another very specific thing there. Kweku is on now. Kweku. Hello, Kweku. Okay. We still have a challenge in Kweku, but let me bring in Adokwe. Adokwe, are you back on?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. No, the line is still really bad. I'm struggling to hear you. So let me go to George. George, so you live in a country where citizens are rarely taken for granted, right? We've seen that in the U.S. a lot. And when they do, the sanctions are clear. I mean, and the repercussions. So I'm asking the question. You way back there, but your bonds are held here. You say you're not comfortable. What will make you comfortable to give your bit to this cause to get us out of the crisis?
A moratorium placed on any kind of travel by from the president to the last person in any ministry is my one thing. And I also support what was said by the gentleman earlier on, that at the end of the day, the ministries needs to be consolidated and brought down. So the thing that I would want, moratorium placed on all kind of travel, to conferences, to exhibitions, to whatever, from the president right down to the janitor in Jubilee House and as part of government. No travel for them within the next 2 years, so that we can save that money. And also, we go ahead and we cut down on the ministries, because at the end of the day, sometimes you don't need a whole flight full of people following the government to do anything. All you need is one person. One person can go represent you. So we need to take astute measures, because I think most of the money that we lose is from traveling and the entourage that goes with them. Most of the times when they go, they don't sleep in the cheapest hotels. They sleep in the 5-star hotels. And at the end of the day, if you're traveling with 40 people and you are sleeping at the Ritz-Carlton in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, by the time every day is going to cost you about $600. $600 times 40. Come on. These are things that we need to pragmatically look at and say that let's stop all travel from minister, deputy minister, assistant, deputy assistant, whoever, and let's come together. That is when I know that they are serious about this. But if they are still jet hopping every 2 days, saying they are going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to this conference, they're not serious about this whole situation.
Interesting. Felix, let me challenge you a bit on the suggestions I've heard from your colleagues, and I know you have yours too. You can add it to it, but just add it to it and answer the question, which is that all the interventions I've heard from Innocent, Carla, etc., there's a counter argument which says, yeah, cut down on ministries, yeah, stop travel, yeah, be V8, etc. If you put that together, we'll make a little tiny dent in the problem that we are facing. We're dealing with a 137 billion CD debt. That's just domestic, right? That will just be a tiny drop, all the suggestions you've made. And so really, it's tokenism and doesn't really fix any real problem. Is that what you were asking for? That the government should be tokenistic about this?
Even though that is just a tiny drop, I think that it will go a long way to show to Ghanaians that government is ready to sacrifice a bit. Then Ghanaians can come in. Evans, one problem I have identified is the posture of government. It is not helping. Even the posture of the president is not helping. For example, look at the National Cathedral issue. President calling on those who are asking that we should shelve the building of cathedral for now, as Tobias and Sambalan, they are naysayers and all that. I think that is an insult to Ghanaians, because we know we are in a dire situation. So why can't we shelve the building of cathedral and look at and save that money, okay, and save that expenditure, and that will help government in reducing its expenditure. But the president is calling us Tobias and Sambalan. I think that
Felix, you raised an important point, yes. But allow me to digress slightly, because I've heard you mention National Cathedral. I've heard Carla too. I'll ask both of you that same question now. The president made those pronouncements because church leaders, and I believe you're a Christian.
Yes, I am.
Okay. So the Christian leaders went to visit him. And the Christian leaders began by saying that those who, the naysayers to the National Cathedral, do so at their own peril, and the president should ignore them, and that he's doing God's work. So if you're a Christian and your Christian leader says that, why do you blame the president?
Yes.
No. Who is doing Satan's work here? Who is doing Satan's work here?
Yes. The fact remains that I'm a Christian doesn't mean that, look, even God or Christ says that you the human being, you are the temple of God. So it is not me going to a cathedral to worship there that makes me a Christian. It is what is within me and what I can show forth. So in this case, the president's posture must be seen to be appealing, but not rather calling on Ghanaians, telling Ghanaians that they are, or calling them names. So therefore, like my other colleagues have said, I think that reduction in the size of government, at least it will go a long way to tell Ghanaians or to show to Ghanaians that government is ready to sacrifice. Look, these flashy programs, 1D, 1F, Agenda 111, free SHS, and all that, all these programs need to be reviewed. Evans, you and I, we were told that salaries of ministers and whatever have been reduced, right? I think by a certain percentage. As we speak, from last year that announcement was made till to date, have they come to account to us how much has been realized and what that money has been used for? We know of a certain regime who says that all ministers or government appointees must cut, they had a salary cut down of about 10%, and that goes into chief's compound building. We have seen that. But under this regime, all that we know is that ministers or government appointees have their salary reduced by a certain percentage. And those monies have gone back into the consolidated account, which is being used, and we don't even know what these monies are being used for. These are some of the nagging questions that Ghanaians are asking. So if you want Ghanaians to buy, look, I am not ready to see Ghana crash. Ghana is the only country we belong to, but government must also be seen to be sacrificing a lot. Reduce size of government. Minister of Trade, for example, does it need 3 deputy ministers? No, for God's sake. For God's sake, it doesn't need 3 deputy ministers. You see, so government must be seen to be doing its part. Then we, the citizenry, will also come in and support. Other than that, it will be difficult for people to accept this debt exchange program as it is now. And government is not even telling us the truth. In one way, they'll say this. In another way, it's another thing altogether. And I think that communication is very, very important in dealing with issues of this nature.
Interesting point there, and I said I would digress a bit because I've heard the National Cathedral come up as one of the things you want government to do to convince you that they are doing their bit, so it gives you comfort to contribute. So, Carla, and then George, I heard you also want to chip in on that point. I didn't want to misquote the man of God and risk the wrath of God, so I'm going to play his own words to you all and get your quick, brief reaction because
Evans, don't annoy us today, please.
Oh, I don't know, but I you know what? They say, I shouldn't.
Well, okay, go ahead. Not if he's going to say anything offensive, because man of God or not, frankly, this is not the time. But go ahead.
Oh, well, let's see.
Your Excellency, your building of the National Cathedral is enough testimony of your devotion to God. And no matter the day says, it will happen. Any Ghanaian who prays against the success of this nation, Ghana, and your Excellency, Nanado, that's so at his own peril. Do not bother about them.
Carla.
Well, first of all, I mean, I should hope nobody is praying against the president himself, who is the leader of our country, and we are relying on him and looking up to him to lead us out of the hole that we're in. And I'm sorry to say, I don't want to disrespect an elder, but I really I have nothing to say to that, and I'm not moved by it. I don't know. I'm a Christian, but I'm not one of those people who's moved by that kind of thing. I mean, it means nothing to me. In fact, I find it offensive and I find it disrespectful. That's what I have to say. In terms of, not caring about the opinions of Ghanaians, if that land did not belong to the people of Ghana, which it does, which is prime symbolic land in the center of Accra, if it did not, then yes, I would agree. Recently I was reading about the basilica in Cote d'Ivoire that was built by Felix Houphouët-Boigny, and how apparently it was built during a time of crisis. I think it's the biggest Catholic cathedral in the world, maybe something like that. And when they invited the Pope to come and bless it, the Pope said that because it was built in a time of crisis, in order for him to agree to come and bless it, they would have to build a hospital nearby. I mean, what does that say about his opinion of the whole situation? So, I mean, as for that, that I don't know, no comment.
Great, George.
Yeah, Evans, I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, you also put the National Cathedral as one of the things you want to see taken off the board to give you a bit more comfort in contributing your quota to helping, save this country from this economic crisis. You've had the
Yes.
positions expressed there by your own, representatives in the clergy on that point.
No, Evans, we need to really, really take a close look at some of these things. Some of these things that are being said by these men of God, I am not going to get into that. But there is no nation that God watched for them to build while they were in a crisis. Even when David was totally satisfied and everything and was trying to build, God told him, hold on, I don't need you to build. There are times that you want to build for God, that God will tell you himself that I don't need you to build. God told him that your son that is coming, which is Solomon, is going to have peace all around him. And so he should rather build for me rather than you that has turmoil all around you. Because David was going from one war to the other war to the other war. So if Ghana as a nation, we are going from one war to another war to another war, financial war, social war, whatever wars that we are fighting, and the clergy cannot read the Bible and understand that God halted David from building for him because he has wars surrounding him, but told him that when your son Solomon comes in, who would have peace all around him, I would then let him build for me. Then I don't know what the clergy is talking about. I don't know where they are reading from. Ghana is in a situation right now that building a cathedral should not be the major aim. $200 million can go a long way to alleviate some of the problems that the country is going through. And so you halt such a project and then you deal with the fundamentals, which is the people that God has given to you to lead. And afterwards, when everything is settled and there is peace all around, maybe it might not be you, maybe it might not be somebody from your party, maybe, but then understand the fact that you are doing it for God and God is no respecter of persons. So whoever comes and picks up from you is also doing God's work. Why should it be you? Why should you put hardship on your people just because you want to fulfill this?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, biblically, I don't see where it was ever shown by God to be that non-caring.
I want to wrap up by getting Innocent to give me a last thought on this, because Innocent, you obviously you've invested too in the mutual bonds, as you said, in mutual funds, as you said, and so this whole crisis you're facing comes down to a successful debt exchange program, the restructuring. So you are really at the heart of this. Am I right to assume that everything I've heard tonight on Ghana Connect suggests that you and everybody else, you're willing to contribute your quota to saving the economy, provided your government will do its part too, but show evidence that they've done it?
Evans, you hit the nail right on the head. Let us see concrete action. Let us see viable targets set that can be measured, that can be seen. And then I believe the average Ghanaian will be willing to chip in and help save this country.
Great note to end this conversation. In other words, the struggle that the government is currently going through to, get a successful detection program paved the way for IMF executive board approval. That this challenge that this whole crisis around the detection program will be much easier if only government will show that they are carrying their own burden and showing the evidence for it. And tonight you've had citizens lay out what they want to see, their specific burdens they want government to show they are carrying, the sacrifices they want government to see, very specific stuff on this. I want to hear from many more of you who couldn't join us live via voice, but many have joined us on social media platforms. So,
yes, Evans, a lot of messages, coming through. Many of them say they like this song that started the show.
Yes.
They say it's quite ironical that the song that used to be the campaign song for the NPP is now what is communicating their sorrow and their difficulties. So they say they like the songs. This one here is coming from Dumavi Ponyo. He says, the government is too arrogant to accept divergent opinion. We'll continue to suffer until NPP is kicked out. George KG says, if we don't have money, no need for free SHS. Parents should pay for feeding to help government. Cut size of government. Stop some non-critical capital projects. This one here coming from Stone Child he says, citizens are being called to sacrifice, but the government is hesitant to even reduce the size of the government and other state agencies. And chiefs and pastors must start to resign from boards. Caleb Mauli Agbale says the president must know that sacking the finance minister will raise the confidence of Ghanaians in the ability of the government in getting us out of the situation. And PK Boachi says, indeed, you are the best media in GH. Our leaders are not humanitarian. This one says, Joseph says, when you are ruling a country with lies, this is what will happen to you. Ebenezer J says, this government is just milking everything out of Ghanaians. Total mess, wants the citizens to sacrifice, but no commitment on their part. We fight on. We live to see. This one from WhatsApp, it says, I love the choice of theme songs this evening, Evans, and I'm beginning to believe that our politicians are wicked men and women in disguise, because how can people who swore an oath to protect lives and livelihoods follow these discussions and yet remain adamant? This one here says, so for me as an individual bondholder to sacrifice, I should see more from who is making me to sacrifice. I should see ministers going to work in their own cars. They should sell off all the V8s and use their own cars. The president should cut down drastically on developmental projects that are not needed immediately to Ghanaians. The government should reduce the number of ministers. All the freebies should be stopped. That is free fuel allowances, etc. should stop. Individual bondholders can't sacrifice in all these government appointees becoming rich and demigods overnight. Their government have not done enough to earn our sacrifice. We are burdened, please. We are burdened. This one here says, hi Evans, in fact everything about the government was a grand scam, including their borrowing spree that has led to citizens being robbed in broad daylight in that their shambolic debt exchange program. I cannot understand the height of disrespect, arrogance and impudence this president continues to show towards us, but he shouldn't take the people for granted. It's coming from you, Ejayao at OEB. Hello,
I guess. And this one says, I don't want to be part of any detection program. Those willing to participate don't have any use for their money. And it says they should sack all unnecessary boards. Let most of public sector workers go. They cost over $4 billion USD annually. Those are your thoughts there, and thank you very much for sharing them with us. And thank you, our connectors on the phone, Adokwe, Innocent, Kweku, Felix, George, and Carla. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
My husband invested in government bonds. He barely sleeps at night. He barely talks. He hardly responds. I'm young. I don't want to even lose my husband. Please help me.